Hi guys, it's me Claire again, and I'm your seed educator for this school year. I am a sophomore at Dickinson College, and today's video we will be learning all about soil. What is soil? Soil is a complex mixture of minerals, water, organic matter, and countless amounts of organisms that are decaying remains of once living things. Soil forms at the surface of the land, and it also supports plant life, which is vital to life on Earth, because without plants, you would not be able to have your carbon dioxide collected and oxygen given to you every single day. So what's the difference between dirt and soil? So dirt doesn't have the nutrients in it to allow plants to grow. So dirt is a product of soil. So it's the stuff that gets on your fingernails, it's the stuff that gets on your clothes, but it does not provide the nutrients needed for plants to grow. So soil helps plants grow, and the majority of your food comes from plants, like your fruits, your vegetables, all that good stuff that your mom or your dad or your guardian cooks with. Plants, they collect your carbon dioxide, they give you oxygen. Those plants need soil. Soil also acts as a ground layer or a base for a lot of buildings. So I don't know if you guys see a good common theme here, but soil is important to our everyday life, whether we realize it or not. It's actually vital to it. So how does soil become soil? So there's 5 major factors. The first one is climate. Temperature and moisture influence the speed of which chemical reactions take place. This controls how fast rocks weather and dead organisms decompose. Soil develops fastest in warm, moist climates and slowest in dry, cold climates. As the second factor is organisms. The spreading of plants, roots, animals burrowing, and bacteria eating help to speed up the process of breaking down large soil particles into smaller ones. Third is relief. The shape of the land and the direction it faces affects how much sunlight the soil gets and how much water it can hold. Deeper soil tends to form at the bottom of hills rather than at the top because of the gravity causing the water and soil particles to fall down the slope of the hill. 4. Parent material. Similar to people, soil also inherits traits from the material of which it was formed in. Soil formed in limestone bedrocks will be rich in calcium because one of limestone's main components is calcium. And finally, 5. Time. Older soils are more developed than younger soils, similar to people. Soils in high heat have been exposed to the sun for a very long time, so they are more weathered. In the northern U.S., soils tend to be younger because glaciers covered the surface during the last ice age and haven't been exposed to the sun nearly as long as the soils in the south.
The next thing we're going to kind of determine for ourselves in this particular area of the farm is what the texture of the soil is. So some things to note is if you feel your soil and it feels smooth, like you don't feel any grit in it. When I'm feeling right now, this is pretty darn smooth, no grit. This is a silty soil. So if it's smooth, it's silty. If you pick up your soil and you're rubbing it between your fingers and you feel a little bit of grit, it's kind of gritty, that's a great indicator that you have sand in your soil. And so that's the first kind of element of thinking about soil texture, whether it's smooth or gritty. So smooth means silt-based soil. Sand or gritty means sand-based soil. If it's a little bit of both, if you're kind of feeling you're like, well, it's a little bit of smooth and a little bit of gritty, then you have a silt-sand combination in your soil. So determining your soil structure or your soil texture is also a way of determining if you have more or less clay in your soil. A good rule of thumb is that you want the perfect soil is a perfect combination of silt and clay. And they call that a loamy soil. So we're gonna see what's here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add a little water because we want a little bit of moisture in our soil. And I'm gonna make a ball of soil. It's kind of wet. You don't want it too wet or too dry, but you want to be able to make a ball. Okay. So if I were to make this ball, and I'm going to squeeze the ball. If it fell apart right away, like this is still holding on to its its structure, if it fell apart right away, that would be a great indicator that I have sand. Think about yourself at the beach. You know, when you put sand in your hand and you squeeze it together, most times that sand kind of falls apart. It doesn't, you know, making sandcastles is kind of hard. And so sand is kind of a hard texture to keep in shape or keep in form. So I know that I don't have a lot of sand in the soil. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start squeezing this to make a tube. You can kind of see I'm making a tube here. And what I'm going to do is use my pointer finger and my thumb to squeeze the end and do something called making a ribbon. And so as you can see right here, this is really interesting, I'm having a hard time making a ribbon. So what this is telling me is that I don't have a lot of clay in my soil, because if I'm getting less than an inch of ribbon, which I'm very easily getting right now, this is telling me that this soil has got a high level of silt in it, because it's not able to keep its ribbon form. Yeah, I'm going to just try it again just to confirm that it's not working. Well, now it is kind of. So okay, so that's an interesting thing that we're seeing. So an inch or less means you have a very silty soil. 1 to 2 inches tells you that you have a combination of silt clay. If you get more than 2 inches, you have heavy clay. So what does that mean? Like, what is that telling us? Well, I mentioned earlier that, so I would say that this particular soil is probably a combination of silt and clay, because now I am able to kind of make a ribbon and it's not falling apart. You can kind of see it's keeping its structure. So what that means for me is that there's a lot of, there's enough clay in here that the soil's keeping its structure, and there's enough silt in here that it's not going to get compacted too badly, because clay can really compact, and compaction is one of your plant's worst enemies. You can imagine compaction to me is like a sidewalk, and trying to grow a plant in the sidewalk is really, really challenging. But what we want more is something that has a combination of hard and soft, so that it maintains a structure but also yields in a way that plants can develop their root systems and kind of get lower and lower into the tiers of the soil. So those are 2 examples that you can use at your home, just to kind of, again, to define how sound your soil is in terms of structure, and also to understand if you have silt or sand or clay or loamy soils by doing this ribbon test. Hope that's helpful.
Okay, so next up we're going to be talking about soil quality and how to figure out if it's good or bad. So I have this super handy dandy poster board, and this helps explain soil quality versus good or bad. So the bad is pretty much the opposite of the good, but you want it to be super moist. So like when you stick your finger and you want it to be like moist, you don't want it to be like dry. You want the soil particles will maintain shape in water. It won't just like disappear, it won't turn to mud. If you notice, like dirt, a good way to tell what's dirt versus soil is dirt will just like turn into mud once you mix it, and the soil particles will remain, which we'll be doing a fun activity later about that I can help show you. And then you want them to crumble, they keep their shape, and also you'll have lots of insects. You want your soil to be rich with insects, you want those little critters, worms, all of that good stuff you want, because that's helping with giving the soil different nutrients which the plants will like absorb through their roots. And yeah, roots will penetrate deeply in all different directions if they will like spread out rather than just grow, and then that way when they spread out more, the plant can grow more and get bigger. And the layers, they will have different layers. They will be deep, and they won't be like a super distinct line. They'll just be like kind of all mixed throughout.
That little hole right there that you can see going through, most likely that was made by a worm. This is a good indicator of worm activity in our soil, because they make these tunnels that hold together. They have a slime all over their bodies that coats the tunnels that they create so that they can move back and forth, kind of like highway tunnels that we move through with our cars. they create the same thing with their bodies. And so this is a good indicator of the presence of worms. And worms are a great indicator of soil health. So when you are gardening, like we do a lot of here at the College Farm, what we pay a lot of attention to is our soil and the health of our soil. And there are two ways that you can easily determine how sound your soil is, and also determine what kind of texture your soil is, because the soundness of your soil and the texture of your soil will help you determine what will grow best in your soil, and also how to make your soil healthier. So the first test I'm going to show you is how to determine how sound your soil is. And what that really means is what the aggregates look like in your soil. So you might be asking, what is an aggregate? And an aggregate is a fancy way of saying soil structure, and how your soil kind of holds together determines how sound it is. So I'm taking a clump of soil that I just got, and what I want to look at is the structure of the aggregates. And so what you're looking for is a soil that looks like cake. You know, to me, if I were to really use my imagination, this might look like some cake crumbs. And so what you're looking for is really good, what they call crumb structure or aggregate structure. And that when I rub it between my hands, it's not turning into powder, it's actually holding its crumb-like structure. So the more sound your soil is, the more stability the soil has. That means when you look at your soil, the more space there is between all these crumb-like structures for nutrients and water and even air to circulate. Nutrients, water, and air are three elements that plants need in order to grow successfully. So I would say, in my humble opinion, that this has really good soil aggregation, or very good soil soundness, because as I squeeze it together, it's not becoming powder. You can see even after squeezing, it's still kind of maintaining that crumb-like structure. Hi, so we're going to talk about compost. Compost is something that's very near and dear to our hearts here at the Dickinson College Farm, and we want to share that love with you. And the first part of getting love or becoming in love with compost is understanding what compost is and how it works. So I'm going to show you what we do at our farm, and this is an easy process to replicate in your backyard if you're interested. So to make a compost pile, you need material, and we break the material down into two kind of families of material: carbon material and nitrogen material. And it's when you combine the two together that they create heat and start the decomposition process. So for us, what is carbon? So here at our farm, we have lots and lots of leaves. So just like you at home, maybe in the fall, you rake the leaves that are falling in October and November. Well, we collect those leaves here at the College Farm, and we use this as our carbon. So another way of thinking about carbon is any brown material. So maybe that's wood chips or straw or hay. Cardboard is even carbon. So things that are brown represent carbon. So then you might ask, well, what is nitrogen? So nitrogen, we say, are the green things, and that's kind of the things that we eat. So for us, it's food waste. So like a lemon or an apple or a half-eaten sandwich or a cookie, which probably would never end up in the compost pile. But things that you eat are our nitrogen or our green matter. Other examples of green materials or nitrogen are grass clippings. So if you mow your lawn and you have the ability to collect your grass clippings, that could be added as the nitrogen ingredient to your compost pile. So what we have here is carbon in the form of leaves and nitrogen in the form of food waste. So if you come closer, you'll see this is food waste that, like this lemon, was ground up. So this is at the college cafeteria. And they grind up all the food waste that students generate. And believe it or not, students at Dickinson generate a lot of compost, about 800 pounds a day. And so we bring that to the College Farm, and we layer our compost pile with green material or food waste. and brown material or leaves. And it might not look like anything's going to be happening here, but as we layer the compost pile and we add more carbon and we add more nitrogen, this great synergy happens. And that's when different microorganisms and bacteria, yeast and fungi start waking up and start eating away at the organic matter. You know, this is organic matter, this is organic matter. They start consuming that organic matter, and that process of eating the leaves and the wood chips and the food waste creates energy and creates heat. And those organisms live and die, and as they die, that process also generates heat and activity in the compost pile. So this is the start of a compost pile. It doesn't look like much, but I'm going to show you what it can become. So we're going to walk to another area here, and I'll show you what this ends up turning up as in about 6 months. So even in the wintertime, compost is still being made, albeit slower. So compost really needs warmer temperatures, like environmental temperatures or ambient temperatures, to help kind of facilitate the heat that it generates in the decomposition process within the pile. So believe it or not, in the summertime, when we add our carbon and our nitrogen and carbon and our nitrogen, kind of layer it like a lasagna, that process of igniting a pile and all the fungi and bacteria, yeast and macroorganisms like worms and millipedes and mice even, can generate so much heat that the compost piles can get as hot as like 180 degrees. That's really hot. In the winter time, they still maintain a level of heat, but a lot less because they're constantly fighting with the ambient temperature. Right now, you can see there's snow on the ground. It's pretty cold right now. I'm guessing it's maybe 30 degrees right now at the college farm, and so you can imagine they're working really hard, but also very slowly because they're fighting against the colder temperatures outside. So we have these great contraptions called compost thermometers. It's a long thermometer that you can shove into a compost pile and read how hot a compost pile is. So let's see what the compost pile is in right now. You gotta really get it in there, but not so far that it's touching the ground because it'll be cold on the ground. So you want to make sure you're getting a reading in the middle of the compost pile. So why don't we come here and take a look. It's gone from 20 degrees, which is what it was when I pulled it out of storage, to just over 40 degrees. And you can see that the thermometer goes all the way to 200. So 200 would be a really hot compost pile, but they can get that hot if allowed to. What I really want to draw your attention to is what we call finished compost. Other people call it black gold because it's so amazing, and it's what we use to feed our crops and feed our soil here at the college farm. So if you remember the compost pile I just showed you that had leaves that you could tell were leaves and lemon rinds and ground up food waste, this is compost that is finished, and you can no longer tell what the original material was. It just looks like soil or dirt, but this is actually really nutrient-rich version of soil that we're going to feed to our fields and to help kind of make our soil stronger and able to support our plants here at the farm.
Hi guys, so today I'm going to be showing you a really fun activity that you can do with soil. So we're going to be making soil art. It's kind of like watercoloring, but instead we're using soil. So the supplies that you're going to need is you're going to need a little bit of water, some soil. This is soil from the farm, and a piece of paper, and then some types of paintbrushes. So first what you're going to do is you're going to take your cup of water and you're going to add in some of your soil. And you're going to want to add a decent bit like that, and you're going to grab a paintbrush and you're just going to mix it together. You don't want it to become like too liquidy or too thick, so it's like you just gotta mix until you get the consistency right. and you might need to add water, get rid of water. So this is the consistency of it. It's like kind of watery, but like there's still like, it's not super watery, it's like a nice in between is how I recommend it. And then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna take your paper and you're gonna start painting. So here's the consistency of it closer up. As you can see, it's kind of liquidy, but still like not. It could be more liquid. I don't know. You just want it like in between is how I would suggest it. So now I have this smaller paintbrush, and you're just gonna go and paint. So I just painted this little flower real quick, and then all you're gonna want to do after you paint it is you're just gonna want to let it dry for about a day or so, so that way it will be all ready to hang up. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed that fun activity. It's super simple and it's super fun, but you can make a lot of fun different paintings and pictures for whoever you'd like to give them to, and it's just easy and it's fun because you probably already have all the ingredients at home, because all you can do is just dig up some soil in your garden outside. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned a little something about soil today, and have a nice day.